All right, I will call this meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee to order. Will the secretary please take the roll?
Senator Harris. Here. Senator Orenshaw. Here. Senator Dondero Lute. Senator Nguyen. Here. Senator Hansen. Here. Senator Krasner. Here. Senator Stone. Here. Chair Scheible.
Here, thank you so much. Please mark those senators present who are not here present when they do arrive. And welcome everybody to Senate Judiciary Committee. We have 3 bills up on our agenda for this afternoon, and one of them is very special to me. It is AB 35. It's the first bill that we will be hearing this afternoon. And I just want to take a personal point of privilege as the chair to say that I love my position. I love working with this awesome group of senators. And one of the best things about chairing the Judiciary Committee is that while I do endeavor to be fair to all sides, I have no obligation to be impartial. And so I'm very partial to AB 35, which is why I'm wearing my Team Tablet t-shirt, and it will become apparent in the presentation why I have joined Team Tablet, which I think is a very forward-looking approach to to creating a framework that can address a number of different issues that we have seen arise in the Nevada Department of Corrections over the last couple of decades, and that will provide infrastructure for us to address additional problems as they arise and make Nevada an even better place to call home. So with that introduction, I will invite the presenters up on AB 35 and open up the hearing.
All right. Good afternoon, members of the Senate Judiciary. I'm James Zarenda, D-Z-U-R-E-N-D-A. I'm the director for the Nevada Department of Correction. I just wanted to bring you the big points on AB 35. AB 35, originally the bill was just to allow the Department of Corrections to introduce wireless devices into the correctional facilities. And the wireless devices have a full range of multiple things that can be done on them, which there's a handout in front of you. There's 28 things that I put on there. These aren't things that are on the tablets. These are things that could be on the wireless devices. I still would have to go through public hearing and show that this is how it's going to be important to success of the offenders, which actually means that the tools that they will be provided through these tablets will actually be able to reduce crime and reduce victimization in the community, which is our biggest goal. On the wireless devices, it's the first time that ever we can actually be able to reach every single offender. Right now, when we have programs that we do, it's when they're available, it's when there's a waiting list, and they get through a waiting list. If the facility they're in, they transfer to another one, they get taken out of programs, they get taken out of training, whether it's job training, whether it's going for their GEDs, whether it's going for under Pell Grants, getting college courses. If we transfer somebody for a reason, a classification reason, they get taken out and it starts all over, or they get eliminated completely and can't finish. Wireless devices will allow us to prevent that. We also have across the country, one of the biggest reforms that you see going across the country besides mental health is segregation, solitary confinement. When you have those that are probably the most not well behaved in society, and they come to the Department of Corrections, and we classify individuals when they get into incidents or fights or assaults. We segregate them into disciplinary segregation. So what we know, the percentage of the population that we have that also have behavior problems. Right now, there is no programming for any of the behavior programs when they get to any type of segregation. This will be the first time that we know that small number of population that we have behavior problems with, we could finally introduce them to behavior problem programming right in their cell. It's no different than what the high school and colleges were doing during COVID, doing long distance learning. We're going to be doing all that with this bill. We're going to be allowing every offender to have access to a GED. No charge. We already met with the schools and Clark County Libraries, who's going to be providing the links to offer it to all 10,000 of our offenders at any time and putting them through this. Pell Grants, college courses. It's going to be allowing also, which the array you can read there is the wireless of the 28 things. It's also going to allow entertainment pieces. And I'll tell you why it's going to be important for that. It's going to allow apps that could do gaming. It's going to do apps that can actually do some type of a Netflix, but it's not Netflix. It's movies that we allow in that are not violent, sexual in nature or criminal in nature. So it's going to allow things that they're going to want. And I'll tell you why it's important in a minute. And it's also going to allow music apps. It's going to allow things that they could purchase, offenders can purchase, that they can actually have forever. So when they leave a system, it gets put into a cloud when they discharge. They go into the community. Anything they purchased or have on the tablets, they can actually bring back with them and download. Whether it's GED courses they're in the middle of, college courses, tests, whether it's gradings, reports, all that is up in a cloud when they leave, and they can actually get it. Just so when you think about cloud and internet and Wi-Fi, this is an LTE-based system. There's no direct access to the outside. What I put also here is all the states in the country that actually are already doing this with just these two vendors. There's more vendors out there, but just the two major vendors, Viapath and Securus, these are all the state prison system in the countries that issues them to every single offender already. We're actually behind the times. Outside of these, there's only 2 states in the country right now that do not issue wireless tablets, and I believe it's North Dakota and Nevada. If you look at the bottom of that page, you'll see even North Carolina Department of Corrections identified through their data that their violent rates in the agency went down 35%. And the reason for all that is because when you have something that is worth it and that somebody wants, a telephone, whether it's an iPad, tablet, wireless device, if it's something that really means something to somebody, they're not going to want to lose it. And wireless devices could be an alternative to sanctions so that segregation doesn't have to be used on all cases. Or it could be an avenue to get those offenders out of segregation sooner by having these devices as either a tool for good behavior or a tool to be taken away as bad behavior or even pieces. There's going to be a lot of services on there that they need when they're discharging. There's going to be Medicaid applications. There'll be veterans services that are offered and connect to veteran services once they're there. And just in case anyone knows how important this veteran service is going to be, Nevada has the highest number of incarcerated veterans per inmate population than any other system in the United States. We have to do something about it, and this is one avenue where we can actually start connecting services while they're incarcerated to try to keep them out of prison in the future and do something for our veterans. Grievances are going to all be on the tablets. There will be a way that the offenders don't have to send them in. Right now we do them in 5 copies for every grievance. That's going to save the paper. It's going to save a lot of money on the 5 copy color codes that we have to do, which is to me is ridiculous and old school. Grievances will also be documented and logged, and we could track them. So you could track when they were filed, when they were answered, how it was answered, which is a big deal because it's going to also help with reducing some of the civil lawsuits that we have on access to grievance and access to services, which is also a big deal for us. The other thing that it'll be on there, there'll be also closed caption for those that can't hear even whether they rent a movie. It'll still be allowed access. Also, I'm not sure the exact number, but I was told there's about 65 different language interpretations that are going to be on these wireless devices as well, both back and forth. Wireless devices also will allow offenders to utilize the phone from the tablet. And just so you understand on the security piece of it, it does not go from the tablet to a cell phone, a tablet to another phone. It goes to our system, no different than a hardwired phone that's in the wall of the cell that goes into our PBX. It's going to do the same thing through LTE. Into our PBX, We allow calls to go out, which calls we want. So there's not a security breach. And like I said, all these states are already doing this, and it's already been tested for many years. There's not a security issue to it. There's a partial of the phone that we can actually do for attorney calls that are confidential and not recorded also. The other part of the wireless bill too is all the maintenance requests. We no longer have to tell an officer or give an officer what we call a kite or a note, and it never gets to where it's supposed to. They take it out on the next staff, saying you're harassing me or not fixing things for me. This will all be logged, documented. Same thing with medical requests. The medical requests will all be documented, logged. The big thing with the medical and mental health, there's also have the ability to do an emergency apps on them. Offender can push the app. It'll be an emergency service notification right to medical and mental health. It doesn't even have to be for themselves. Their cell partner they notice is talking about suicide or is not looking well. They can actually report it directly to medical and mental health. Another reason why it's good, it'll be logged, it'll be recorded, it'll be also documented, so medical, mental health will have to do something. Doesn't mean run and respond. It could be just picking up a phone, check on this individual, what do you see? Is it an emergency, is it not? But they'll have to do something. Another big thing for some of our lawsuit problems. Another issue is email. It'll allow offenders to do email out and allow us to send the emails back in. Goes through us, we allow it. No different than regular mail. However, the email access, if they want it, they can have the ability to do it so it's quicker and have easier access. There is going to be a way that we can allow the attorneys to have access to the offenders all the time. But the only thing is the only way to do confidential attorneys is in our visiting room. We're going to have video visiting with the tablets. Once it's docked into our visiting room, they could do video visits with parole, they could do video visits with the courts, they could do video visits with attorneys, and it's all confidential. This is going to save a lot of things. It's going to save transportation to the courts. It's going to save transportation in the community with offenders that are dangerous, so we're not jeopardizing some of the safety in the community. A lot of this is, and like I said, all this is being done already. It's not that we're going to be the test pilot for it. These are things that are already done that I wanted to have on there. I also met with the director for the Clark County school systems, Clark County library systems. They're going to allow e-books that are no cost through all the tablets so they can have access to the library. We also have access to the legal law library. Problems that we have in the system is trying to get enough room for offenders to go in there to use the law library. And then we have lawsuits that pile up with access to law library. It's one of our larger cases of civil cases against the department or access to legal materials or law libraries. This will allow every offender to have it right in their cell. Again, going back to the telephones, why it's important to me on a safety and security issue, even with the staff. We have when we are only having 5 hardwired phones in a housing unit, and that's because there's no other trunk lines available. It's not like we can put 10, 20, we can't. We're maxed out in all of our housing units, we can't even add additional. So what happens is they fight over the phones, they listen to each other's phones, they extort people over the phones. The gangs charge offenders to use the phones, which we cannot not figure out and be able to catch. They will stop all this because they can use it any time in their cell. They will not be someone listening to them, listening to their cases, listening to who their family is, their children are, so that they can extort them or go after those individuals to do something illegal. It's a big deal on the security piece because you still have staff that will have to respond also when there's a fight, assaults that can actually get bloodborne pathogens involved with the fights where staff can actually get hepatitis and things that they don't want to go home with. These are going to be a reduction in the violence, like I said, from North Carolina that we'll see, which is actually protects the staff. In these tablets as well, we could do. It's really endless, and I just put the 28 things that I could see. but it actually, the biggest thing also is access to religious the denominations. They claim there's over 72 different denominations that we can actually have internationally connect with. And they could be either, if they do live services, we can do live services into the cell, or we can actually do recorded services from any denomination. Right now, we don't have enough space for that. We don't have enough staff and preachers or service people that can actually help us, clergy that can actually help us with all these denominations. Again, it's going to be a reduction in lawsuits. Access to religious services is actually another one of our high number of civil cases that are against the state and the Department of Corrections. The other things that I think will be important is that we can do is when we're doing education, we're doing resumes, cover letters, all that could be put into clouds, teaching offenders how to do them when they get out, how to do the applications. All this will be put in a cloud, so when they leave, they have all these ready to go. Or we can have them so that we can send them out before they get out there. Another tool that can help the offenders to be able to have some type of success or tool to make them successful when they leave the prison system. Anything we also want to add on there, like our inmate handbooks, to have things that can actually tell the offenders, and it doesn't have to be visual, it can be verbal. We can do video. We can tell offenders what the rules and regulations are, how to navigate the system for either grievances or for court. What do you do if? How do you get people on your visiting list? And all this can actually be put on there. And the last thing I just wanted to mention too is the programming piece. There are some programs that are evidence-based programs like MRT, which is moral recognition therapy, which is for those with behavior problems that's used nationally. The number one largest evidence-based program that's out there for the prison systems around the country is MRT. It can actually, 90% of it can actually be done through the wireless devices. So we can, like I said, we can have access to be able to affect more offenders at one time than we can do now because of limited availability and space. The other piece with the phone access and the videos that can go into the docking stations, it'll be the very first time that offenders can actually have a video visit even. Because what happens is with the tablets, they get docked into a docking station that allows the videos to happen. They can't get video visits from the tablets in their cells. It's only when they dock it will allow them to even have communications with their families from overseas. So we have a lot of offenders in our systems that are from international countries that have not had correspondence or have written correspondence, but not any visual correspondence or communications with their families, their mothers, their fathers, their children. It'll be the first time they'll be able to do that right from the correctional facility. Outside of that, that's really all I have. I know big questions that I keep being asked is the security piece of it. And like I said, we're having only 2 states in the country that aren't doing this. If there were some security issues that were being asked of me that weren't addressed already for the larger states that issue tablets, I think we would have known already. According to Viapath, which is on one of the pages, they said that 85% of the offenders in the entire country, every prison system, 85% of the country is being issued the tablets already. And like I said, Nevada is not. We currently have about 10,000 at any given time in our population, and we do not issue tablets. And we do not have authorization even to provide any type of wireless device outside of AB 35. Anyway, that's all I got. If you have questions, I'm here, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Director. Questions from members of the committee? Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Director, for presenting the bill. A couple of questions I had, if you'll indulge me, Chair. If this passes, then do you think inmates at NDOC facilities who either for health reasons or safety reasons can't leave their cell will be able to participate in education or therapy via the tablet if they are not able to go to a group setting?
James Arenda, for the record, that's exactly why I want them. This will allow everyone at every given time to be allowed access to services through the programs, through the tablets. Even if you're a discipline problem, you're in hospital, you're in inpatient hospital, still will, except for outside hospital. If you're an inpatient hospital in the correctional facility, you will always have access. And just so you know what happens with what I should have explained with these tablets, why this is important going from even housing unit, different facilities, inpatient medical. The tablet's not what you're connected to. You're connected to your PIN and your voice. It's going to be voice imprinted. So when you get a tablet, we have to have you read into this device that'll imprint your voice, and you get a 4-digit PIN. That's what keeps you access to your tablet. So at the end of the night, when you dock your tablet to get it charged for the next day, it wipes everything out to factory setting. The next morning, you have to sign back on. It brings everything back on to any tablet you have, so it doesn't matter where you're located. We'll have our infirmaries, we'll have tablets, our young adult populations, everyone's going to be issued a tablet, so you have it all the time. So it doesn't matter where the tablet is. The only reason why it's important with the docking is just so we can recharge it, but it can be recharged anywhere, even the hospitals.
Thank you, Director and Chair. Thank you. If this passes, thank you for the answer. Do you envision inmates being charged for using the tablets or doing legal research via the tablet?
James Arenda for the record. So there are going to be some charges, but not for legal research. Law libraries is all 100% free. The access to the ebooks, 100% free. The things that are going to charge, which I still can't say will be because I still have to go through a public process for that and through the Board of Prisons. But it's what my intent is charging for offenders if they want to buy certain apps for gaming apps, if they want to buy movies. There's going to be a list of items that if they want to have those services, they're going to have to pay for it. Phone calls, there's still going to be a charge. What's going to be important, that's a big deal to me on the phone calls, is because there's going to have full access to everybody through the tablets and there's going to be more phone calls made, I could actually have the rates lowered. Right now, it's 12 cents a minute for anyone that uses a phone. Which is still at the FCC recommended rate of charging for a phone, but I can lower that to 9 cents or less because there's going to be more phone calls made and they won't need the revenue as they do with having less phone calls. So I could even actually do better than we're doing now.
Thank you. And my last question, you mentioned inmates being able to have video visits with their attorneys. If this passes, I mean, that sounds like a good option, but will inmates and their attorneys still be allowed to have in-person visits at all NDOC facilities, even if this passes?
James Arenda, for the record, I should have mentioned that this replaces nothing. It's not going to replace family visits, attorney visits. Those still will be the option to do. All it's going to it will help reducing for those that can't get there. But the intent of the tablets, even with the videos, is not to replace visits. In-person visits are more important to me, that it needs to continue. It's not going to replace it. It'll just help those that are either, like I said, out of the country, that can't have travel, can't take a day off at work. We can schedule an appointment for a half hour, and you don't have to take the day off at work, travel across the state to get one to our rural facilities. I think it'll save the families a lot more time and money and their jobs, too.
Thank you. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Other questions? Senator Krasner.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for your presentation, Director Zorinda. So this reminds me of a bill that came before us in 2017 that was similar to this. I just have a few questions. So why does existing law prohibit this if it's so good? That's my first question.
So James Arenda for the record. So right now in the NRS, I don't have the exact NRS in front of me, but the NRS does not allow me to do any type of wireless device function in a facility, no matter what. Even staff can't bring a wireless device in. It's just against the law. You're right, when that bill came up when I was here, what we ended up getting passed was wireless device access into just our release centers because they needed it for jobs and that, and for school piece. The school and education piece was allowed to do it, but not full access to the facilities. Right now, the NRS prohibits that.
Right, and that seemed reasonable to me, that amendment. So why should we do this for people who have broken the law and are in prison? I mean, why not do this for students?
James Arena for the record. So just so everybody knows, I'm not doing this for the offenders. I'm doing this for the community. If we do things that are going to reduce the chances of them going back out in the community by giving them tools for education, for programs, for veteran services, for Medicaid applications, all this is proven to reduce victimization in the community. So as it looks like, it looks like we're doing this for the offenders, but we're really doing it for our community, because I got to find ways. I have those that have not been successful in the community, or that have the communities failed them. I have to find ways out that it doesn't happen again. And the only way that I know that I can reach out to everybody for the most success is the wireless devices, so that when they get out, they will have better tools and availability for services, so that our kids and our families are going to be safer. So it's really more for us.
Okay, and then it also says that there's going to be ability to earn a associate degree and baccalaureate degree. Who will pay for these classes?
James Arenda for the record. Thank you for that. The Pell Grants. So right now, there's federal Pell Grants that pay 100% of this. We've already been meeting with the school systems, and they're here today if you want to have questions with them for the Pell Grants. But the Pell Grants are grants that the federal government gives to allow access for offenders to have education that the grants will pay for through the college system.
And one more. It also says that they'll have internet access. That's kind of concerning. How do we know that an inmate won't access the victim that put them behind bars, the rape victim, or the person they beat up, or get the victim's phone or address, or put out a hit on a victim, or maybe a gang hit? If they have internet access.
Yeah, thank you, James Renner, for the record. So it's not internet access that you have from your phone or your tablet. It doesn't have internet access direct to the tablet. It's an LTE system, which means that their tablet goes directly to what we call a PBX room. The PBX room is what allows internet in and out, not the tablet. So the tablet does not have direct internet access. They will get internet access through an LTE system. So it's a closed system that does not go direct to the tablet. So there's no way that they can have access to any internet services direct without going through our system and us allowing or not allowing things in or out. So we control what goes in or out, not through the tablet. So it's called an LTE system, and that's why I said all the other systems in the country, they do this, and they haven't had any breaches of the system through the tablets, into the internet, because there's no way you could with an LTE system.
Okay, and then that was one of the things I remember that came up as a concern in 2017, that some of the inmates are so savvy that they know how to take even just a kid's handheld device and somehow rewire it so that they will have access to the internet. How can you guarantee that that won't happen?
So James Arena, for the record, you are correct with that, and it all came out when we were doing back then, even the Game Boys and the PS3s. They were allowed to do direct. That was all changed. That was in 2 generation ago tablets. They don't do it through internet or Wi-Fi anymore. It was at the time, if you remember on that, it was a Wi-Fi system that was going to allow the tablets to connect to the Wi-Fi to get out. It doesn't do it anymore. New systems have come out to stop the breaches were LTE. That's new to what we're doing in the tablets and new and around the country. And like I said, all those other around the country, all those other systems around the country use the LTE. They don't use direct Wi-Fi or internet for that purpose. So there's no way, even if they're savvy enough, they can't have access, because it still goes to us.
And then what about telephone calls then? Do they have to tell you this is a phone number I want to call and it's approved? What stops them from calling and harassing the victim that they beat up or attacked? Or
So James Renner, for the record, so it's done exactly the same as a hardwired phone. There's no difference. Goes directly to the PBX. We database what phone numbers they can actually have access to. So when it goes to us through the LTE into our PBX room for the phone room, it'll automatically say you're calling such and such a number. However, if we didn't database and put that number in there for the offender, it's not going to call it. It's not a direct phone call from the tablet to the individual they're trying to reach. The things you're mentioning could still happen if they do third-party calling. The call we approve for them to have will still have access to it. What they do on that other end in the community is the same way they do it right now with a hardwired phone. They can call 3 ways, they can do something different, they could put a phone next to a phone. We can't stop that, however, we can record it, and when we do, we can prosecute or, because it's all going to be recorded, we can prosecute or turn off privileges for use of the phones because they're misusing what there was intent for. But they cannot go direct to a victim, they cannot go direct to someone we did not already authorize the phone call to.
All right, Senator Hansen.
Thanks, Madam Chair. You mentioned at the beginning of your testimony that 48 other states have this. We're kind of on the tail end of everything. The question I have, all the bugs have been worked out, because, a lot of the questions that my colleague was just asking, that are obvious concerns that we all have. In other states, have they had significant issues, breaches, or whatever, that have had these systems in place? And obviously, you've had a chance to review those. What, in this bill, do we have sufficient information for you or permission for you to make sure it doesn't happen here by any chance?
So James read it for the record. If you Google it, you will find breaches. But you got to look at the dates. You got to look at what generation of the tablets they were. Because I remember when we were looking at the tablets first in 2017, there's things that we saw on the internet from California back in 2004 when they first started doing the tablets. They had people dropping cell phones off on the rooftops, whether they're doing them through drones or throwing them. They were able to get hot spots. That doesn't happen anymore. And just to make it how serious these are, if you Google Department of Corrections for Texas, they're now issuing the tablets for every offender that's in death row. And I think there's 483 tablets going in death row just this month. They just got the contract with Securus, and they're issuing out 62,000 tablets this month, and then they're going to issue out another 80-something thousand tablets next month, and they're doing it for death row. These are not systems that I'm making up. I'm not the pilot. These are systems, like I said, are already being used around the country. If you have other states that have more funds than I do to do research and go at, if they're issuing these tablets out, they've been researched enough, and they're not going to issue tablets to death row in Texas if there's a problem with it.
So obviously they've done thorough screening, and the benefits greatly outweigh the risks, it sounds like. Question on attorney-client privilege. I don't know how it works in prison. When an attorney meets with a client in the prison face-to-face, do you guys, are you allowed to screen those? And if so, do you also plan on screening ones that go through this new system?
So James Arenda, for the record, the only thing we screen is to make sure that it's an attorney on record. That's the only thing. We do not listen to any conversations. We do not have anyone present, staff present during the conversations. We have to have a visual just in case the attorney doesn't get assaulted, but we do watch the visits, but we don't monitor them, we don't look at them, we don't listen. It's going to be no different than the video. It's going to be a video room that's set up in visiting. They could do video visits with any attorney or courts. We do not get involved unless we're asked to as witnesses, but we do not record and we do not listen to attorneys. The only ones that we will be is and that has to be perfectly clear with the attorneys, is when it's in a housing unit. If they're communicating through video visits in a housing unit because they want to do it at odd hours, 10 o'clock on a Sunday night, they still can, but it's going to be recorded and monitored. It's not going to be confidential.
Okay, now, but you do screen standard calls, right? My understanding is if I call, I got a relative in the prison system or vice versa, you guys monitor all those calls, correct, currently? So it'd just be attorney-client.
James, running for the record, yes. Every single phone call right now is recorded. Every single phone call on the tablets will be no different. All recorded, except when we have it logged as an attorney phone call. It automatically shuts the system off, so there's no recording of any conversations. But in the videos in the housing units, they will be recorded, but just not in the visiting room.
Now, I don't know if members of the committee know it or not, but Director Zarinda is actually a movie star. And I got to see some of the, you kind of laugh, but I was laughing because I'm thinking, okay, you're going to let Netflix movies in this place, and I'm just wondering, you're not going to have any saying starring director James Zarinda, are you? Because you were in, I imagine you'd have to screen them.
James, right for the record, so I get a half a penny every time Good Time is being released, so I got to make sure there's some ethical issues with this, too.
That was my next question. There better not be any kickbacks in this, Director Zarinda. No, I don't know if everybody's seen those. That actually is. It's a movie, so congratulations, movie star. Anyway, it sounds like a great program overall. So, the only last question: what's the difference between this one and the one we had from on the Senate side? It sounds like we had something very, very similar. Is there anything different between the two?
James Renner for the record, there's no difference.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I think Senator Wynn had a question or comment.
You know what? Senator Hansen actually asked asked, and you answered my question regarding us being kind of the last in time to like do this. I think it's a great program. I think it sounds like it will make your job a lot better. It sounds like it will make transitioning from people in being incarcerated to being out in in society much more. It'll make it a smooth transition. So I'm very supportive of it. So thank you. That's all.
And I think I saw Senator Stone down at the end. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Chairman, or Director Zarenda, if this doesn't work out for you, my daughter's a talent agent in Hollywood. I think she probably want to talk to you. So, no, I think this is a wonderful program. You figure you're in an 8x10 cell, 24/7, staring at walls. This allows them to get religious fulfillment, family fulfillment, and which I think is very important to reducing recidivism. And I think that's certainly the goal. Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. I think this really goes a long way into rehabilitation, especially helping with their education. So, is this going to allow the inmates to basically use their pads, if you will, 24/7 to make phone calls, or is there going to be certain time limits? And are you going to be controlling the population of people? You vet the people that they're going to be talking to before they make those calls.
So James Renner, for the record, it's not 24/7, 8 hours that has to be docked for charging because we don't have electricity in the cells, so they can't charge their own tablets. So 11 at night till 7 in the morning, whatever hours we have, it could be changed different at each facility. They have to dock it, which brings it back to the factory setting, but it's only for the purpose of charging it, so it lasts for 16 hours. So it will, for that purpose, it's not 24/7, but when they do have it, they can use it for the phone calls. What we do have for those offenders that misbehave, it's not lose the tablet or have it. We could take away certain pieces of it. So we could use it as behavior tools. We don't want to take away law library, access to books, or access to the family, but if we want to take away their games, we want to take away their videos. So there's ways that we can do that individually. Then you behave. Instead of going to segregation, you behave. We'll give you this. We'll give you more until you give us like 5 good days. You'll have full access again. So I think it's going to be important for alternatives to segregation, which is a big deal. And I think you will see like North Carolina having the reduction in violence is going to play a big role. It's like you losing your cell phone for a day, how devastating that is. When these offenders have this access and realize the importance that is, losing that tablet for even a half a day, I think is going to be a big deal in controlling violence and helping staff as well.
So would this allow a inmate to have intercommunication with other prisoners that are in the prison system? And I think you made it clear that these emails that they're having, you're monitoring what goes out, and I assume you're monitoring what goes in.
So James Amanda, for the record, yes and no on your answer. They can't, unless we could give permission for it to have access to other offenders. If we have a mother that's dying, that's incarcerated in this facility, and their son is at another facility and she's in hospice, we can connect them if we want. It's not going to give access to it, but we can, through our system, to be able to do that. But anyone that has those tablets cannot have access to another tablet in another facility unless we coordinate it through our end. And every time the offenders use the phone, it's recorded. It's also, we allow access. So even though they want to call somebody, they don't get access unless we approve it.
Thank you. And then one final question. I assume these tablets are going to be like little iPads, I would imagine. I would imagine that you're going to, or they probably in other prison systems have some type of rubberized boundary on them. Obviously, we don't want the tablets to be used as a weapon. I don't know if that's been an issue in some of the other prisons. And I'm sure these tablets are not inexpensive. I'm not sure how you're going to pay for them, but is there going to be any kind of a deposit that an inmate's going to have to make so that there's some skin in the game if they decide to take the tablet and step on it and crash it because they get ticked off at a guard for something?
So James Renner, for the record, I should have brought this up before you asked. Thank you for asking. So they're supposed to be indestructible, but nothing's indestructible. I mean, they've tested them by dropping them out of 7 and 10-story windows. They've driven tractor trailers over them, bulldozer over them. They can't break. They're hard. It's a Lexan type material that has rubber around the outside. I should have brought one so everybody can see it, but I can. And they're small. They're not really large like a regular tablet. They're smaller, but you could throw them. You can throw them against a wall. They'll bounce back faster than you threw it. They can use them to hit somebody with. However, we have a lot of items in our house, chairs they can hit somebody with. They can hit them with virtually anything. So, but if you hit someone with a tablet, it's a misuse of your tablet, you lose it. So I think it's going to be the sanctions for misusing your tablet are going to mean a lot more than behaving problems over there. So I think it'll resolve itself.
Thank you.
All right, Senator Krasner.
Thank you, Chair, for indulging me on a follow-up. So just something from what you said about how a prisoner would be able to access anyone on their phone, a victim, a fellow gang member, if they make a 3-way call. Is that making a call to one person but including another person?
So James Renner, for the record, what we found, and even we charge criminally is I can call you if you have another cell phone or a conference call phone. You can call anybody you want, and you're not doing it through us. But the party that you called can make any call and put the phone next to it, and you could hear me talking, hear them talking, but it has nothing to do with our system. So there's ways of doing that we can't prevent. However, we do have them recorded. When we find out, they are charged criminally.
I'm sorry, and then so like the 3-way calling, so they can include another person, a fellow gang member or a former victim. If the worst scenario occurs and somebody's raped because of that phone call, or somebody's murdered because of that phone call, a witness or a gang member or a victim, and a lawsuit is brought by the surviving family, can they name the Nevada Department of Corrections as a co-defendant so that they can make sure to get damages from you?
So James Renner, for the record, not a co-defendant, but all the evidence is controlled by us. So we do get subpoenaed, and it happens now already. It has nothing to do with the tablets, but it happens now already. And with the law enforcement agencies subpoena us when we have criminal activity on it, and we have to produce everything we got and all the recordings and anything else they want that's related to that they can use for a criminal case.
Okay, so if NDOC wasn't vigilant, then they could be sued and they'd have to pay money damages, correct?
James Renner, for the record, I guess you could be sued over everything, but we do not listen to every phone call. We record every phone call, but we're not listening to. And I'm sorry if I'm okay to say this. I didn't answer Senator Stone's question about how you even pay for this, which if I could after you're answered, it just threw in my head.
Yeah, go ahead.
So James Renner, for the record, how we pay for this, that's what it costs nothing for the state for purchase. It's zero fiscal. We don't pay for the tablets. The company does. The way they get their money to pay for all this is through the purchases they make through the gaming, through the videos, through services that we provide or will offer, video visiting. When there's service or fees that are attached to it, that's where they get the money to pay for all this. And when you say that if there's a tablet that did happen to break, the company will be the fastest ones to repair it or give you another tablet, because they lose a lot of money if that tablet's missing or broken. So it's no cost to the state.
All right, thank you. I also have a couple questions I just wanted to clarify. I'm trying to envision how this would work. And is the idea for the tablets that the offenders can pick them up from their cell and take them with them when they go to dinner or when they go in the yard, or are they supposed to stay in a certain location like the library or the cell?
James Renner, for the record, so we haven't done the contract with Viapath yet, but we have to decide in our facility where they're going to have access to it. So if you take your tablet and you bring it to a visiting room, it probably won't work. You take it to a classroom, it will work. You take it outside, it will work. We have to identify those areas that we want to have LTE capable, just we haven't determined that yet.
Okay, thank you. And then I also wanted to clarify for the record that when you're talking about, especially when it comes to sanctions for offenders who don't behave appropriately, the control settings for the tablets would be centralized and they would be associated with the offender's profile, which you described as using a PIN number and the voice. So it's not like, old school parent controls where you have to take the physical tablet and say, oh, this is Jimmy's tablet. He doesn't have access to, iTunes today. It's a centralized computer system where you log in and you say wherever Jimmy logs into a tablet, that his account will no longer have access to iTunes for the day or something like that.
James Renner, for the record, thank you for asking. That is exactly how it works. It's specific to the inmate themselves. We have we connect their PIN with their inmate offender number and with their personal identification, and that's how we do it. And I think somebody brought it up in one of the subcommittee meetings. The company will not be allowed through contract to give any personal information that the offenders have out to anywhere in the public or any other vendors.
Thank you. And then just one last question. It doesn't affect my support of the bill. I'm just curious whether it will enable people to sign documents, either via DocuSign, which I know is a brand name company, or with a stylus and a signature or something, because that's something that I've encountered a lot in my work, is that someone needs to sign. Sometimes it's related to their court case. Sometimes it's not even related to their court case. A family member just needs them to sign off on some financial document or a lease or something like that, and they have to mail it to the prison, wait for it to go through. They have to physically sign it, mail it all the way back, and my gosh, how nice would it be if they could email, sign, and email back.
James Renner, for the record, right now I don't know any state that does have that. It's not to say that we can't in the future, because everything still has to go through our notary, but right now there's no signing of documents that are allowed on this, and possible in the future it could.
All right, thank you. Those are all the questions I have. I think that's all the questions from the committee. Thank you again for your presentation. We'll move now into support testimony. Since we do have a couple of bills today, I'm going to limit testimony to 2 minutes per person, but we'll start with testimony in support here in person for AB 35. Please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Madam Chair, thank you for the opportunity to be here. For the record, John Sandy with Pearson Education. Pearson is a provider of curriculum for education and has worked with a number of states and their departments of corrections and similar programs like this with a lot of success. I feel education is a very important component of the rehabilitation process and definitely support AB 35, and thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Alejandro Rodriguez, Director of Government Relations for the Nevada System of Higher Education. NCHE is in support of AB 35 as it is instrumental to our campuses, expanding access and accommodating a larger number of students, particularly with the upcoming availability of Pell Grants for incarcerated individuals. So we urge your support. Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, Jonathan Norman with the Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. Between our we represent kids in foster care. A lot of parents are incarcerated, so them being able to participate, having a relationship with their kids when it's appropriate is important. We also work with the Federal Pro Bono Project, so we match inmates with pro bono attorneys, so I think having the ability where they don't have to drive for communication is really important. We did offer a friendly amendment, and we would support this bill whether that amendment was accepted or not. It was so attorneys were specifically enumerated. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Erica Roth, ERICAROTH, on behalf of the Washoe County Public Defender's Office, testifying in support. I just want to touch on a few questions that were raised. First, in regards to the three-way phone calls, this is not something that would be exacerbated by the tablets. This is something that already exists and that is already addressed by NDOC with regular telephone calls. So this doesn't create a new problem. It's just the mechanisms are already in place to discipline somebody for doing this. It does not give them a new or different opportunity to commit a crime. And then the other thing I want to touch on is when we're thinking about, spending money on people who are incarcerated, if that money can be better spent elsewhere, I think it's important to remember that it's not just the people who are incarcerated that are going to be touched by this legislation. It's their family members who are all your constituents. And so when we're thinking about how do we make our families stronger, our communities stronger, and ensure that when people are released back into the community, that they have done so with a generous support system to ensure that they don't recidivate is very important, and we support this bill. Thank you.
Is it okay if I just answer, respond to some of the questions? Along with what Erica said, that,
But we need your name.
what's that?
Your name.
Oh, yeah. My name is Jody Hocking, JODIHOCKING. And I'm the founder and director of Return Strong. We work with incarcerated families, and I am part of an impacted family. My husband's actually incarcerated. And so I think, along with what Erica was saying, all of the things that are your concerns currently happen. They're not, and they're dealt with through the systems, through the disciplinary process, through the court system. I wanted to use the emails as an example. If I send an email to my loved one, it goes to, because it's kind of confusing when you're talking about the room, but it goes to the mail room. They have to check it and respond to it, and then it gets released to me. The same thing would happen in this process. All of those systems to protect already exist, and the ways around them are not going to be any different with the tablet. That makes sense? Okay. So, since I feel like I've talked about this bill about 1,000 times, I decided to do a little countdown for you with some of the concerns that I've heard or reasons that we support it. So number 6 is the cost of the calls and the emails. This is not about the cost of them. Well, we're concerned about what cost could be. That is a different process. That will be determined by the RFP, the vendor, negotiations with NDOC with them, and they're handled through a different process. One of the things that I frequently hear is that there are going to be people who can't afford to pay for premium services. That's absolutely true. I've been paying for somebody's Netflix since 2015 because their family can't afford it. So they're on my account. Don't tell anyone. But the same thing happens inside, except right now we're talking about people who can't buy food and packages and hygiene. They also can't afford premium movie channels. But now with tablets, they would get free library of books. They would get, the grievance process, religious service. There's a million things. They could go to school. All of those things would be included. So even though they may not get some of the premium services, that exists the same thing now. This helps address the impact on incarcerated people and families regarding staffing shortages. This will create more opportunities for people to program, to go to school, to do all of those things. I forgot to give you all the numbers. Number 2 I'm on. It would improve the current kite process, which is really ensures accountability. That's been one of the things that we've been very concerned about. So the grievances, medical kites, caseworker kites, if you don't know, those now get folded up on those little pieces he was talking about and are put in a box with a slit in the top, like a suggestion box, and they disappear into nowhere all the time, which is why we have all those lawsuits. Number 1 is this really creates hope and opportunity. I said this once before, people don't always make good choices, they have good choices. When we have our prisons filled with people who don't get an opportunity to make good choices, they're going to default to not having choices, and nobody makes good ones with their back against the wall. We're in full support of this. We're Team Tablet, even though we didn't get t-shirts. We're a little salty about it.
Kent Irvin, ERVIN, Nevada Faculty Alliance. So our members are actively, or some of our members are actively involved in prison education programs, which educational advancement for our incarcerated citizens is one of the best ways to reduce recidivism. There are a couple of obstacles that our programs at universities and community colleges and the prisons have encountered. One is due to the high vacancy rate in corrections because of the lack of classroom monitors. You can't hold a classroom if it can't be properly monitored. And another is access to educational materials, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom setting, and this bill will help that. So we fully support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. John Puro from the Clark County Public Defender's Office. The loss of Zorinda put this state back probably 10 years. For those 4 years, we did not have them. This bill is great. It's going to move us forward. There's a couple things. Senator Hansen, to your question about visitation. When I go visit a client at the High Desert State Prison or Southern Desert, I sit at a table in basically the lunchroom with people close by. So it's really not that great of an environment for me to visit a client and talk about meaty issues that we need to talk about when resolving a case or moving a case forward to trial. This would actually improve communication, and we regularly communicate with people by video in the Clark County Detention Center. It speeds things up, and it would save an hour-and-a-half drive for attorneys in our office, actually. So it would help do that. And if some way we get things going where we can do court appearances for people from prison by video, that will also help out, because that move at like 3 in the morning with your bologna sandwich to court is a terrible move. The second thing I'll say is hearing about that library. In 2019, I got a library card. I call that my best life hack. Reading books, it's going to put people so much further ahead. Taking classes on their tablet is going to put people so much further ahead, so that while they're in there, they will experience some amount of reform, which is the goal of corrections. How people are treated while they're in affects how they come out. This is a bill that will make people better when they come out and keep our communities safer when they come out. Thank you.
Before you go, could I ask you a question? Because it just sparked in my mind as you were describing reading books and having access to the library. And I wonder if you have seen in your experience some of the self-consciousness and shame that comes around still seeking an education while people are incarcerated. And I'm wondering if having tablets would provide just a level of privacy that might make people more comfortable if, they're a grown person who still reads at a 6th grade level and has to go back and relearn basic concepts. Do you think they might be more willing to do that on a tablet when they weren't willing to do that in a classroom situation in front of all of the people who they're incarcerated with?
John Puro for the record, twofold. One, yes, answer to your question. Second, sometimes in groupings, there's a problematic person. So you avoid going to class because that problematic person is there. You wouldn't have to avoid going to class anymore.
Thank you.
Chair and committee members, for the record, my name is Andrew LaPilbut. I'm the chairman of the United Veterans Legislative Council, representing the 279,000 veterans in our state. I'm here before you today saying ditto, 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 ditto before me. However, we previously testified in the neutral on this bill. For the record, we are in support.
Hello, I'm James Palumbo, Palombo, and I represent the Nevada Prison Education Project. And this is really inspiring for me to participate in this and to see you all, almost all in support of this, I think. I got my education when I was locked up in 1970 in the Nevada prison system through UNLV and a program that we really had to struggle to put together. Chuck Wolf was the director, and he was on the other side of all this. There wasn't going to be education in prisons, particularly post-secondary education. So when I see this and I see a director willing to stand up, and this is complex and far-reaching material and issues on the table, but as a director stands up and says, let's take this on and let's move on to contemporary times, it's good to see this, and I think the prison education speaks for itself, both in terms of what it does for the offender and ex-offender and potential victims and recidivism and the public harm that comes from ignorance. So I'm in support of the bill, and if anybody has any questions, I'm here to answer them. So thanks for doing what you do.
All right. I don't see anybody else here to give in-person testimony in support of AB 35 or in Las Vegas, so we will go to the phones for testimony in support of AB 35.
Thank you, Chair. If you'd like to testify in support of AB 35, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. With the last 3 digits of 318, you are unmuted. Followed with the last 3 digits of 318, please press star 6 to unmute.
Hi, yes, this is Taurus. Ball, last name is spelled B-A-U-G-H, and I would like to say that I do agree with it does eliminate some of the things that's as far as prejudice. So let's talk about the phone calls. There's a certain amount of a certain amount of phones in a unit, and the number of inmates that have to wait to use the phone. So I think that's beneficial. I think that's good for the inmates. As far as the books, I normally send my loved one books a month, and that for it to be free, I think that's very good. That's to save money in my pocket. I don't go against it. I like everything about it because I do talk to someone that's currently locked up in Texas, and they already have the tablet out there, and I just want to say that I approve of it. That's basically it.
Tanya Brown, Tonja, BROWN, Advocates for the Inmates and the Innocent. Thank you, Madam Chair. And I want to say thank you to Director Zorinda. One heck of a presentation. Thank you. Great bill. We are in strong support of this bill, and it is a win-win situation, not just for NDOC and the inmates and their families, but also for the taxpayers. There will be less lawsuits filed against NDOC because of this, which again will save the taxpayers millions of dollars down the road. The programming, they'll be able to complete their programming, which will result in a favorable parole hearing, ultimately will lead to a granted parole and release to the street, which again will save the taxpayers money. I'm sorry, my dogs are bothering me. I'm sorry. Stop it. Anyways, we are definitely in favor of this. And then I have a message from the old timers. Thank you, Brubaker. Thank you. Have a good day.
Hi, my name is Pamela Browning, BROWNING, and I am hashtag Team Tablet all the way and in support of AB 35. Thank you.
Melissa Duna, MELISSA GUNA. I support AB 35. It is very important to have inmates have communication. It will be much easier with the families, and for schooling and education, I fully support this bill. It will give them lost credits regained and will make their time in prison more successful and short. Thank you.
Hello, my name is S.A. Padgett. That's P-A-D-G-E-T-T. I am on Team Tablet and in full support of AB 35. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Millie Booth, and I'm in support of AB 35 for all the reasons that have already been stated. Thank you for your consideration.
Hello, my name is Nicole Williams. I would like to echo the comments in support of all the previous speakers, and I am on Team Tablet and in full support of AB 35. Thank you so much.
Chair, that concludes all callers testifying in support.
All right, thank you. We will go to testimony in opposition to AB 35. Anybody wishing to give opposition testimony is invited to do so now in person, but I don't see anybody, so we'll go to the phones for opposition testimony on AB 35.
If you'd like to testify in opposition to AB 35, please press *6 to take your place in the queue. We have no callers testifying in opposition.
All right, then we will go to testimony in neutral. Anybody wishing to testify in neutral is invited up to the front now. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair and committee members. My name is Nick Shepak, S-H-E-P-A-C-K, and I'm the State Deputy Director of the Fines and Fees Justice Center. The Fines and Fees Justice Center deals with costs incurred in the criminal legal system. We do not take a position on electronics or new devices that are given to people while incarcerated. Our many conversations with Director Steve Jobs, Zurenda, about the tablets has led us to believe that we are going to roll this out in this state in a responsible manner. We've seen tablets rolled out in many different states. Some have been at an extreme cost to individuals. Some have been rolled out extremely responsibly. What we will do as an organization is continue to monitor the cost to incarcerated individuals and their families moving forward. And if at any time in the future we believe that there are consumer protections necessary, we will bring those concerns to this body. But we appreciate your time and we appreciate the director. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody wishing to give neutral testimony on the phone?
If you'd like to testify in neutral for AB 35, please press *9 to take your place in the queue.
Hello?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I'm having phone issues right now, but I'd like to support this bill. Can I do that right now?
Sure, go ahead as long as it's less than 2 minutes.
Okay, my name is Ashley Gaddis, Gaddis, and I would like to support this bill. I have been formerly incarcerated at Florence McClure, and I have experienced the lack of programming, the lack of legal access, the lack of education, and I feel like having these tablets in place will be a game changer, and I 100% support this bill. Thank you.
Hello.
We can hear
My
you.
name is Betty Guest. That's BETTYGUESS. I was also in line for in support of this bill, but didn't get access until now. So I am fully in support of AB 35. I thank you, Chair and Committee, for hearing this bill. Thank you, Director Zorinda, for your presentation. And I am absolutely 100% hashtag Team Tablets and in support of AB 35. Thank you so much.
We have no further callers to testify in neutral.
All right, thank you. And it actually sounds like our two neutral callers were in support, so we'll reflect that in the record. And I think that brings us to the end of testimony, and I'll invite the presenters back up for any closing remarks, if you have any. And I think Senator Don-Darrell also has a question or comment.
So for closing, James Renda for the record, Director at the Nevada Department of Correction. As I mentioned, this is nothing new that we're doing. It's something that's been vetted out through the entire United States except for North Dakota and Nevada. So it's a system that I do trust. And because we do something or do allow something on a system for the future doesn't mean we can't stop it or remove it or take it off. These are not permanent. So it's something that if we do have concerns with in the future, it can temporarily or permanently be removed. So it's something that is not, like I said, a permanent system. But anyway, thank you for your time today.
Thank you. And Senator Don-Darrell.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and apologies for being out of the building. I was actually not out of the building. I was on a different floor presenting bills. But I'm sorry I missed this presentation, Director. In another generation of my life, you and I talked, so I suppose I'm on Team Tablet. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. And with that, I will close the hearing on AB 35. I will also remind everybody here that we are once again at that time of session where all of our members have to flit about this building, giving presentations, doing work sessions for bills. And so please don't take it as a sign of disrespect if they're not here during your presentation or come and go during your presentation. I can personally attest that all of these members are very vigilant about catching up with me or by watching online later. And so they do take very seriously the job that they do here. So with that being said, we will now open the hearing on AB 414.
With that, thank you, Chair Scheibel and committee members. I am Shay Backus, representing Assembly District 37 in Clark County. Thank you for the opportunity to present Assembly Bill 414, which revises the power of attorney for healthcare decisions. And I do understand if anyone needs to leave, I take note of it. I'm right there with you all with various committee hearings as well. Let me give you a little background as to why I brought this bill. In 2019, I actually brought Assembly Bill 299 to revise the durable power of attorney for healthcare decisions. I did this due to personal reasons and professionally. When my father-in-law suffered from vascular dementia, the durable power of attorney for healthcare decisions that he had assisted me and my husband with his end-of-life care. As an attorney, I knew that the form contained in Chapter 162A was not that great. Often, I would find clients agreeing to various end-of-life decisions that ultimately contradicted their decision. Also, there were additional forms that had to be filled out. While I started to update Nevada's power of attorney for healthcare decisions, I knew the form still needed more revamping to make it user-friendly. Thus, the current statutory form still is commonly filled out incorrectly. My interest in making sure that a person's wishes for their healthcare decisions could involve less barriers and work on a law that could be generally accepted continued through work with the Uniform Law Commission. I had the pleasure for nearly 2 years to work on a potential uniform law governing healthcare decision. The anticipated model law will provide guidance and a legal framework for individuals to make decisions about their medical care in the event they are unable to do so. The model law will not be up for a vote until this summer, though. So what I've done is, with this bill, I'm hoping that we can still update the current law with a proposed new form that has also been fleshed out for the last 2 years. With that, I would ask the chair if you're okay if I walk you through the bill itself. Okay. So it's pretty simple at this time. We have sections 5, 9, 11, and 19, which add more definitions that may not have been in the original Chapter 162A. Also, sections 36 is kind of the bulk of the bill. And some highlights and differences from the current form is that it is in plain language for a person who is filling out it to have ease of doing so. Additionally, it is not only provides one's instruction about life-sustaining treatment, it also sets forth the principal's priorities. This allows the agent to have an understanding as to the principal's desires, if the instructions are not clear, and a decision may have to be made by the agent. This form further provides a variety of optional instructions and special powers given to the agent. Section 57.7 updates the requirements for witnesses who witness the principal's signing of the healthcare directive and removes the mandates that if the individual resides in a hospital or other specific medical facility, that the principal does not need to attach a certificate of competency to the power of attorney. Sections 57.3, 61, 64, 67 through 70, and 72 make conforming changes to existing statutes. Section 78 provides that NRS 162A.860 will be repealed. I do want to update the committee on some requested amendments. This bill originally did pass out of the Assembly unanimously, but since it passed out, I have been reached out by the probate section of the Nevada State Bar seeking, one, to either hold off on updating the form this session and wait till 2025 when we're back in section following the Uniform Law Commission hearing to see if they approve and make a uniform law, or second, go ahead and leave in the current existing statutory form. While I will always continue work with stakeholders, I do want to stress that the minimal changes that were made in 2019, because one of the issues is we've updated a lot, the changes in 2019 were minimal, but it still left a form that creates a lot of confusion. And so I do believe this is the time at least to update the form that we do have in statute. But I will continue to work with folks with respect to that. And before I close, I have with me also today Jonathan Norman from Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. He will also be able to add on some issues that we have found with the statutory form.
Chair, members of the committee, Jonathan Norman with the Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. One of our members is a senior law program, which is a pretty small legal service provider in Clark County. They only help seniors. That's the thing that qualifies you to be a client there. And one thing they came to me and said is that they do law clinics where they train lawyers who it's not their practice area to help clients fill out these forms. And they were finding with an attorney who they had trained sitting next to the person, the forms were being filled out incorrectly around 25% of the time. And when we have like plain language and how important that is. People should be able to have this form and be able to fill it out without an attorney. This shouldn't be something that requires an attorney, and it certainly shouldn't be something that has a 25% error rate, even though it's an attorney who's not in their practice area helping people. So that's why I appreciate the bill. And with the idea of delaying till 2025, that means we have an opportunity to do something now. So we're going to have a 25% error rate for the next 2 years because we put that off. I just don't think that makes sense. I think we have an opportunity to do something that will help people fill out these forms and make sure their wishes are followed. Thank you.
And then in closing, I would just like to thank the committee, including Chair Scheibel and the rest of the committee members. And with that, we are ready to take any questions that you may have.
All right, thank you. Senator Dondero-Loop?
I would love to ask a question if I knew what to ask. So thank you for doing this. I've heard many uniform law bills over the years sitting on Judiciary, and I always am amazed that one more thing gets a little tweak. So thank you for doing this, Assemblywoman.
If I may respond, Shay Backus, for the record, by and through Chair Scheibel, to Senator Dondero-Loop.
Oh, you
I
can
just
go
want to
direct.
make sure everyone understands this is not yet a uniform law, just because I'm on the committee, and so I've had the privilege the last 2 years to see where it's going and had the permission to still the form early on to offer that to the committee. But I'm pretty confident it's probably going to pass in July and become a uniform law. And so if it's not me, I'm hoping someone would bring that uniform law in the 2025. But my big ask is to make sure we get this form in so that people it's user-friendly and can access it and fill it out appropriately.
All right, other comments or questions? Senator Krasner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. So I just have a question. You said the state of Nevada Bar has asked you to hold off on this until 2025, but you're still going to bring it. So is it okay for people to use it, or should we wait to pass this in 2025, or what do you think?
Thank you, Senator Krasner, Shay Backus, for the record. The ask was, it's the probate section of the Nevada State Bar, and what happened was they were diving into it and felt like they didn't have enough time, and I'm sure they're going to be here. I welcomed them to come and speak in opposition to this bill. They didn't really have an opportunity to oppose it in the assembly side. And so one of the things is I think a lot of people felt comfortable on that, maybe in that section with respect to the existing statutory form. And then we're also concerned that the current form had been amended in 2019. But since I was the bill sponsor who amended it in 2019, I can tell you guys exactly the minimal work that I did in that amendment before there was overlap with Chapter 449, where there were like redundant forms that had to be filled out and were like cross-referenced. And so I basically removed that mandate and added another provision in there regarding the use of like opioid medication at end of life. And it was that simple. But even then, I believe probably if we pull back my testimony for 2019, I definitely wanted to do more. What I envisioned is what I'm bringing today. And with that, if anything was brought in 2025, it would be to look for a uniformity of what is our existing 162 with hopefully accepted throughout the United States.
So, Assemblywoman Backus, because the state bar has, you just said that they might be opposing this, you still feel like we should pass it this session rather than wait?
Thank you, Senator Krasner. Shay Backus, for the record. Yes. So what it is, and we all have different memberships. I mean, for those that are licensed attorneys, like the section that I participate is in the construction law section of the state bar. The thing that I want to stress is right now, the form is not a mandated form by statute. It is a optionary form. And so basically you could create whatever type of health care directive that you wish, as long as it's consistent with Chapter 162A. And so in 162A, there's like just different provisions, like the witnessing requirement, defining who is an agent, and the likes. And so this form is a good substitute because it is in plain plain language. I mean, and I want to fully disclose, I'm also a board member of the Senior Law Project, and so I've known and been talking to them about issues that they were having with the form. And the Senior Law Project, which is really nice, is it's not like you don't have to have a minimum sort of income to go to the Senior Law Project. They provide legal service to all seniors throughout the community in Southern Nevada. And so it is an existing problem. And so it may be a few people. I don't know how many members are on the probate section. That may be something you guys may want to ask if they come up and testify in opposition.
And if I can just also jump in, Jonathan Norman for the record, Senator Krasner. You know, one thing I think about is the probate section of the bar is people who are having an attorney on their case. Most people, as we know, can't afford to have an attorney, and this form is going to be something that's accessible to the vast majority of our population, and the attorneys will still have the option of, as long as it complies with the statute, of creating their own form independent of this, and they could continue to use the form as it exists today. So this will help our, seniors, not just at the senior law program, but across legal services who may not have an attorney and are getting the form from one of the self-help centers. Thank you.
Sorry, Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Assemblywoman, thank you for bringing this forward. One of my kids is a wills and trusts attorney in California, and we talked many times about his work, and it's amazing to me how many people don't have a will and how many people don't have a medical directive, including people that have some comorbidities that make them very vulnerable to getting into a situation where kids don't know what their wishes of their parents are, or loved ones. What I like about your document is it's written in without the legalese, if you will, or with legalese, so that you can a layperson can read it and understand it and get through it and have something. And like it was mentioned, this is just another template. Anybody can write a holographic directive if they want to do it in compliance with the regulations, and hopefully the bar will see the utility in this. But I see it as something that is going to be very helpful to a lot of people that can't afford an attorney. They really want a medical directive, should have a medical directive, and I could tell you put a lot of work into this, and I just wanted to thank you for bringing it forward.
All right. Any other questions, comment? Oh, Senator Orenshaw, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Assemblywoman Backus and Mr. Norman, for presenting the bill. Before my biological dad passed away, we hadn't grown up together, and we got to become very close in my adult life, but we didn't really talk about his last wishes or what he would want if he got very sick, because he'd been very, very healthy most of his life. And I think this would have really helped him, and so I really appreciate the bill. I guess just one question I have for the medical directives, would that have to be notarized or witnessed? Or is it just something that the person would sign and fill out?
Thank you, Senator Orenshaw. Shay Backus for the record. So right now, one of the things, and I'm glad you raised this, is that was part of the updating, is right now Nevada law requires either 2 witnesses or a notary. And so the form basically does have the 2 witnesses. The uniform law does move it towards just 1 witness. There are exclusions for who can be the witness, but right now I kept it uniform with the 2 witnesses on the proposed form, and then just updated our statute, because our statute had something like, if you're in say you go to assisted facility, because you're older and that's where you're at, skilled nursing, at that point they mandated you would have to have a signed certificate that you were competent to fill out this form. And I just think we need to remove those barriers, because if we have all of these barriers, folks are not likely to fill out this form. And this form is very important, and I'm sad that you guys didn't have that for your biological dad. I had one of these for my father-in-law, and under the old form, which was always complicated, but it really provided me guidance with his end-of-life care.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any other questions. Thank you for this presentation. And we will move now to testimony. Those wishing to testify in support of AB 414 in person are invited up to the tables in the front of the room. I don't see anybody in Las Vegas. We'll go ahead with our testimony here in Carson City.
Thank you. Kimberly Surratt. I'm a family law attorney, but my practice is also estate planning with the attorneys in my office. And I'm fully in support of this. I can't tell you what a nightmare it is to sit down with clients and try to fill out the current form. It is a jumbled mess of words that don't coincide together very well. You can make it make sense as a lawyer after a good hour of trying to go through it with people. But they never quite understand it, and they're never quite sure you told them the truth about what's in that form. They're always suspicious of you. I would also say, just to give a little defense to the state bar system, I was a former president of the family law section, and not having support of the bar, as individual section of the bar, is not necessarily a negative thing. We cannot speak on behalf of individual bar sections without vetting it through the entire bar. So in order to do that, we give our bills to the bar, the entire bar, in July before session, so they can share it with every single other committee, and every single committee chairman has to say if they're in favor or not in favor before you're allowed to take a position and go in front of the Board of Trustees, then have it voted on that you're allowed to come give a position with the paragraph you're supposed to quote beforehand about how it's not the position of the entire state bar. So it's hard for sections to do this in a quick manner during session, and we get asked, especially when you're a president of a section, you're constantly asked to give the bar's position, and you can't. Thank you.
All right. All right. I don't see anybody else coming up to the table to give support testimony, so we will go to the phones for testimony in support of AB 414.
Chair, we have no callers testifying in support at this time.
All right. Then we'll move to testimony in opposition to AB 414. Anybody wishing to testify in opposition is invited up to the front now. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Melissa Clement with Nevada Right to Life. And my opposition is kind of like sketchy at this point. I'm going to be super transparent with all of y'all. I haven't had a chance to really go through this, but I thought since we missed it on the other side, I thought it was important that I just say I'm going to be talking to the sponsor, and I appreciate her reaching out to me just now. So thank you very much. Appreciate it.
All right. I don't see anybody else coming up to give opposition testimony, so we'll go to the phones for opposition to AB 414.
Chair, we have no callers testifying in opposition at this time.
All right, then we will go to testimony in neutral on AB 414. Don't see anybody coming up to the front in Carson City or Las Vegas. We'll check the phones and see if anybody has joined us for neutral on 414.
Chair, we have no callers testifying in neutral at this time.
All right, then that brings us to the conclusion of testimony. If the sponsors would like to make any closing remarks, please go ahead.
Thank you so much, Shay Backus. For the record, I do just want to touch on one thing, and I was able to share it with Ms. Clement, is I wanted to inform her when we were doing the form, we did have individuals that were right to life, and actually the form changed a little because some of us that were drafting it tended to lean one way. And so that was something we did work on during the session to make sure that the form was pretty neutral, but I look forward to having those good discussions with her further. And I just thank you all for your time today. And with that, I would ask for your guys' support of AB 414.
All right. Then I will now close the hearing on AB 414 and open the hearing on AB 444. And invite those of you presenting up to the table and to begin whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much. Again, good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and committee members on the Judiciary. I'm Shay Backus, representing Assembly District 37 in Clark County. Thank you for the opportunity to present Assembly Bill 444, which establishes various provisions governing proceedings relating to custody, adoption, or protection of Indian children, or the termination of parental rights. Today, I have the pleasure to present AB 444 with two attorneys who have experience in ICWA-related cases, specifically Felicia Quinlan as in the district attorney's office, and Jonathan Norman, who's not only practiced before the Navajo Nation courts, but also has had experience with our CAP cases at the Legal Aid Center of Southern Nevada. But I want to provide some background information before we dive into the bill. In 1978, Congress passed the Indian Child Welfare Act to protect the rights of Native American children and families in child welfare proceedings. ICWA recognizes the unique cultural heritage of Native American tribes and seeks to preserve cultural integrity of Native American communities. Adopting ICWA into Nevada state law will help to ensure Native American children and families in Nevada are afforded the same protections and considerations as those under federal law. There are several reasons why Nevada should incorporate ICWA into state law. First, Nevada has significant Native American populations, and these communities have unique history and cultural heritage that should be respected and preserved. Assembly Bill 444 will help to ensure that Native American children in Nevada are able to maintain connections with their families, communities, and cultural traditions, which is critical to their well-being and long-term success. Although progress has been made as a result of ICWA, out-of-home placement still occurs more frequently for Native children than it does for general population. In fact, recent research on systemic bias in the child welfare system yielded shocking results. Native families are 4 times more likely to have their children removed and placed in foster care than their white counterparts. So in spite of advances achieved since 1978, ICWA protections are still needed. Second, establishing provisions governing proceedings relating to custody, adoption, and protection of Indian children or termination of parental rights will provide additional protections for Native American children in state law. These protections include specific standards for child welfare proceedings involving Native American children and placement preferences that prioritize keeping children with their families or within their communities. AB 444 will ensure that these protections are applied consistently and uniformly in child welfare cases involving Native American children across the state. Finally, incorporating ICWA into state law will help to address historical injustices and trauma experienced by Native American communities in Nevada and across the country. I just kind of wanted to touch on 2 of those as an example. In the late 1800s, what we'd refer to the assimilation era of federal policy towards Native nations, the United States took Native children away from their families and put them in government-run boarding schools aimed at erasing their tribal identities and ties to their communities. I'd give an example for those that have not been out to the Stewart Indian School. It is a must-do. That school was still in operation as recent as the 1980s when it stopped operating as a school, but always what's chilling to me is seeing the big boulders that created those buildings. Those were done by children. They brought stonemasons up from Arizona to teach the children to make those, and they actually built the outside of those schools. So I always think that's really interesting to see firsthand. And there's cute stories about like Paiute families and it was heartbreaking of what had transpired with the children that had gone up to the school and like mom standing outside the river. So then the other, as early as the 1950s, was the next anti-tribal era that is known as the termination era for federal policy of explicitly terminating the political rights and identities of Indian tribes. The federal government again promoted taking Native kids away from their families, and with this was the help of churches and adoption agencies. The federal government, in what is known as the Indian Adoption Project, encouraged the removal of Native children from their families and their adoption by non-Native families. And that was kind of the response of ICWA. And so by recognizing the unique cultural heritage and history of Native American communities, Nevada can take an important step toward promoting healing, justice, and respect for individuals and communities in the state. And so, Chair, at this time, if you'd like, I would like to turn the presentation over to Ms. Quinlan, who will walk us through the bill.
Thank you. My name is Felicia Quinlan, Quinlan, and I just wanted to go through the sections of the bill very quickly for you. Section 2 provides the legislative intent, specifically that Nevada recognizes the special legal status of the Indian tribes and their members and the inherent jurisdiction of the tribes to make decisions regarding their children and the custody of those children. Sections 4 through 17 define the terms in this bill. Specifically, Section 9 is going to define a child, and that's important to know when this act would apply. Section 18 defines custody over an Indian child. Sections 20 through 38 of this bill establish provisions concerning proceedings in which the legal or physical custody of an Indian child is at issue. At note here, Section 31 provides for notice to the tribes that an Indian child is custody of an Indian child is at issue. Section 37 provides for placement preferences, which are in line with the federal law at this point. Section 40 makes conforming changes to the provisions of existing law to reflect the changes in sections 2 through 39. Sections 42 through 50 establish provisions specifically relating to the adoption of Indian children. Section 50 provides for the tribal customary adoption would be something new for our state. Sections 51 through 70 make conforming changes to the provisions of existing law. Section 71 provides when this act would apply to tribal state agreements. Section 72 provides reporting under this act by the Division of Child and Family Services to the standing committees on the Judiciary. Section 73 requires Division of Child and Family Services to submit a report to the chairs of the Senate and Assembly standing committees on the Judiciary describing the implementation of tribal customary adoption as an alternative to permanency option for wards who are Indian children, and the division's recommendations for proposed legislation to improve the tribal customary adoption process. Section 74 provides that full faith and credit would apply to records of judicial proceedings in tribal court. Section 75 addresses how state and federal law would interact with this act. Section 76 of this bill authorizes the court administrator to adopt any rules necessary to implement this law. Section 78 of this bill repeals certain provisions of existing law that are no longer necessary because of the provision of sections 2 through 39, and Section 79 provides for the effective dates for provisions set forth in the act. So that's kind of the bill, the rundown of the bill, and I want to just note that this is something we do here in Clark County. I do handle all of the ICWA involved cases for Clark County for the Child Family Services Department, and I just want you to know this is a practice that we are doing. It's not something that we are asking you to pull out of the sky or create a brand new. This is something we are doing, and I would like that our state law would reflect that. And I would now turn it over for Jonathan Norman.
Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Jonathan Norman with the Nevada Coalition of Legal Service Providers. When I came to Nevada, I had the pleasure of being assigned to the ICWA court where Ms. Quinlan was our DA. So I represented kids in foster care who were Native kids with a federally recognized tribe. But prior to coming here, I had worked, my legal services career started on the Navajo Nation Indian Reservation, where I got to provide representation for Navajos, Hopi, and the Jicarilla Apache members on a variety of civil legal service issues. The legal aid I worked at, DNA People's Legal Services, which the word is harder to pronounce than deoxyribonucleic acid, so it's not normal DNA, although people would call us for inquiries on genetic testing. But it's attorneys who work for the revitalization of the people, and at that organization, about 60% of the staff was Native, and there wasn't, the number of people I worked with who had been at a boarding school had been removed from their parents, and now because of laws like ICWA, had their grandchildren in their custody and were teaching them the language, whether it's the Hopi people teaching their grandchildren who could have, but for ICWA, ended up anywhere in the United States outside of the tribe. I just think it's really important, those languages and customs and cultures are going to be lost if we don't help maintain those family units. And then when I came here and got to work in child welfare, the difference that makes, so I had two boys who both had autism. They were tribal members. I think they were the Taos Pueblo. And both those boys were extremely difficult to place because they had autism, they were nonverbal, and so they were placed at a post-acute center, which is like a rehabilitative center in Las Vegas. And because of ICWA and the work of the Department of Family Services, our office, and the tribe being involved in the case, eventually we were able to find relatives that did not know that these boys existed, who were able to take them on and provide them a home that the tribe was comfortable with, and the tribe made sure that the customs of the tribe were going to be maintained for those boys as they grew up. And so, you know, it has a real, I don't know, this law has a real, it makes a difference for tribes, and it makes a difference for kids in the active efforts that have to be used to make sure these kids are with family. So I don't think I have anything else to add. Thank you to the sponsor.
Thank you both. We did provide a conceptual amendment. I don't even know if it's a conceptual amendment when we asked, like we had proposed an amendment on the other side, and our amendment came out with a provision, but we intended to delete section 51.5. I was working on an amendment and I submitted the wrong copy, and so that section 51.5 was still in there. And so the intent was to take that out. And then also we've been working with others to kind of more tailor this a little more. And one of the things we're going to do is to clarify that the provisions surrounding the termination and adoption of an Indian child do not extend to like a situation where you have a voluntary relinquishment termination by a parent outside of Chapter 432B, where there is a subsequent adoption by a family member or next of kin. And so I provided some examples on that, like if you have a step-parent adoption, you know, I mean, that's common. And so we put that in there, or someone who's giving, has a biological child that they're going to have a next of kin raise the child. So those were some stuff we were willing to work on as a proposed conceptual amendment. So that, thank you guys so much for your time. I know it's been a long afternoon, but we're ready for questions.
All right, thank you so much. I'm sure we have a couple of questions, starting with Senator Krasner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your presentation. So I have a few questions. I know that current law provides that federal law applies that Native American Indian tribes are sovereign, and state law does not apply to them. So, how does that work here? And then also about the Indian Child Welfare Act. But let's start with the first one about being sovereign, please.
Thank you so much, Senator Krasner, for your question. Shay Backus for the record. I'll try to touch on what I think you're asking, and I have also, it's so nice having experts at the table that are in this work too, and I'm not standing alone here. But yes, no, definitely, I will stand by our tribes are sovereign nations, and I will also further elaborate that we have codified in state law in Nevada that we recognize their sovereign status, and we have a government-to-government relationship. And so when you look at that government-to-government relationship, that's kind of what we're doing with ICWA, is there's provisions in here, certain sections that give full faith and credit to the tribal courts. These are situations that happen off of the reservation. And so if you, for example, maybe the case that Mr. Norman was referring to with the Taos Pueblo children, they probably were in Clark County, and they may have been removed because their family was living there. And so that is the situation that is at hand. And I will go ahead and over if anyone wants to else add on to it.
Jonathan Norman for the record. So one thing I think to think about is this is not putting an obligation on the tribes, right? This is putting an obligation on our state, and for people, if the tribe chooses to engage in these cases, they can, they don't have to. So I don't think we're injecting an obligation onto the tribe. We're providing protection to tribal citizens who maybe weren't on the reservation at the time. And I think Felicia maybe can elaborate more if there's anything to add.
Thank you, Felicia Quinlan for the record. So the way that it's not that this bill would apply to the tribes, it's actually applies to your child welfare agencies and how we do our business as a state agency and how we interact with the tribe. So actually them being sovereign is part of why we need the bill, so that we have instructions on how to interact, as Assemblywoman Bacchus said, government to government. So it's not that we are creating an obligation, we are creating a kind of guideline on this is how we interact with you. This is when we need to transfer something to your sovereign court. This is when you can interact with our court. This is when we give notice to your tribe about what's going on in our court. So it's state court, it would apply to, state law would apply to state court, if that makes sense.
Okay, and then I think that there was a United States Supreme Court on Indian child welfare. Has that issue been settled, and how was that decided?
Thank you, Senator Krasner. Shay Backus for the record. That is why I'm bringing the bill. So you are correct. There is a pending case before the United States Supreme Court titled Brackeen v. Holland. And in that case, there's a variety of issues that are being addressed or could be addressed by our current Supreme Court. And so what you'll be seeing is a lot of states throughout the United States. I think we now are up to 12, with Utah having a similar, like, codifying similar laws into state statute. That is only passed out of one of their House levels. And now similar laws like ICWA have been codified in state law in 12 other states. So it's kind of getting ahead of it in case Brackeen does change the Federal Indian Child Welfare Act. And there's a multitude ways that that could come out. But there has not been a ruling. I haven't checked it in the last week, but a ruling has not come out yet.
So no Supreme Court ruling has, okay, thanks.
All right, other questions? Senator Hansen.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I guess I'm getting old. I remember competing against the Stewart Indian School, and they were great athletes. They were proud of their school. Their colors, I remember, were red and white. Same, in fact, just like Worcester High School today. So I don't know, guess I'm getting up there. But the question I had, it wasn't that long ago, there was a big fight about the welfare services people were typically putting white kids with white families, black kids with black families, and so forth. And there was a big hue and cry about that being some kind of an act of discrimination, and they were discouraged from doing that. So I'm kind of wondering, it would seem to me logically that, yeah, if you're an Indian child in this circumstance, you ideally want to be with the family, and then if you put it with your community, is that also applying now for black kids that are in this circumstance, or white kids, or Hispanic kids, or Asian kids, or whatever?
Thank you, Senator Hansen, for your question. Shay Backus for the record. I may let those that are working in the field answer a little further, but I do want to kind of touch on an Indian in the classification. That is also a geopolitical status, not necessarily just a race status. And so I always like to make sure and share that with folks when we're having these conversations. But with that, I want to, I don't know what the current, if there is policy, or what's happening right now on the child welfare staff.
Felicia Quinlan for the record. So at this point, we have a crisis, a little bit of it, in Clark County, and we're looking for foster homes. So we don't line up children. We look for family settings for children. We do place children with families, and we don't look at race. So this is different because it's not a racial issue, as Assemblywoman Backus was talking about. It's a citizen issue. So if you're a citizen of that tribe, then you want to be with your family or other tribal members. So it's not race-driven. I know it's also erased, but it's not race-driven.
Okay,
So
well,
we don't do race-driven placements, at least not in Clark County.
Okay, well, that's what I was kind of wondering, because, honestly, when you read the bill, it sounds almost like we're splitting hairs a little bit, because there obviously is a component, ethnic component, or whatever you want to call it. No, I think the idea is great. I'm just kind of wondering if that's applied not just to Indian kids, but to others. But apparently, that's not the case. You just take whatever your best foster family, irrespective of the color of the foster family or the child.
Jonathan Norman, Senator Hansen, I think that's, everything that was said is correct, but having represented kids, we want to make sure, like us CAP attorneys representing our kids, that our kids are comfortable, right? And that could be, taking it out of side of the ICWA context and just, any kid you get on your caseload. And that can be, not necessarily anything to do with race, but it could be any number of things, from how do you take care of hair if you're white and you have an African American child in your home? Do you have the tools and the skills, so we make sure that our kids are comfortable in their placement. And sometimes, that can manifest there. Or, I've had kids on my caseload who were immigrants, who were Ethiopian, and just the change in food from the food that they're used to eating with their parents, traditional Ethiopian food, to a home where, maybe peanut butter and jelly is the food. We work to make sure our kids are comfortable in their placement, and sometimes those things come up. So, but like Ms. Quinlan said, right now, unfortunately, we have kids at Child Haven we need placements for. So I think we're looking for good, safe homes, and then those things are secondary.
I got it. Even with this, I mean, you're trying to do this as your first line of defense, and if you can't find, an ideal family in the community you want. Now, I do know another thing. Growing up in Nevada, there were often friction between the Paiutes, the Shoshones, the Washos, and so forth, in their own tribes. In fact, I just had this with how they were dividing up monies between. I have several Indian reservations in my district, and there was a fight about how the money that came from the Navy or whatever, how it was going to be distributed, and the Ombi Indians were very much upset with the Indians at Walker Lake and so forth. So I'm kind of wondering, does that factor into this decision making as well? Because the thing just kind of says a member of a tribe, and the tribe is defined kind of very generically, but do you guys also try to even boil it down so far as, like in your case, a Hopi versus a Navajo versus an Apache, or are they all completely comfortable now and they all get along? And
Felicia Quinlan for the record. So we do deal with specific tribes. So for instance, there's 14 bands of Cherokee that are federally recognized, and so you're the specific tribe, and we deal with each specific tribe and identify and treat them as their own entity. So it's not, I understand the definition is broad, but it encompasses all of the tribes. So yes, it does make a difference if you are Hopi or Washoe or Shoshone. So.
Okay, well, no, that's why it just makes sense. I mean, I'm just kind of drilling down, trying to figure out where we're going with this, and it sounds like a great idea overall. Obviously, our goal here is to try to help the kids in really unfortunate circumstances. You want to get them with the best families possible that they're most comfortable with, everything from food to hair, and it sounds like that's what this bill is designed to do. So I just kind of wondered on the broader perspective how these things happen with other ethnic groups or whatever. So you've answered my questions very well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for the presentation of the bill. I think I'm going to date myself along with Senator Hansen here in that growing up in the 1970s in Las Vegas, we had a family friend who grew up at Stewart Indian School. So I got to meet her and hear a little bit about her upbringing. I like the bill. I guess my question is, if this passes, do you think there will be more options for children in foster care to be placed and not be waiting for a placement and maybe waiting at Child Haven or waiting in placements that aren't going to work out if this passes, and maybe there are placements on tribes or with some of the reservations. I just wonder if you think this might lead to more placements and kids spending less time waiting for a placement.
Felicia Quinlan for the record. So with complete candor, I don't believe it will have an impact on how many placements we have, because that's not what's going to do it. What's going to do it is the active efforts we make to recruit and get more placements, and each individual family and what family they have available, and when we work with the tribes, what tribal members they have available. The law is just the tool that we use to get to those things.
Thank you. I still think it's a great bill. Thank you very much for the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
All right. I don't see any other questions, so thank you again for this presentation and answering all of our questions. We'll move now into testimony in support of AB 444 and invite anybody wishing to give support testimony in person up to the tables in Carson City or Las Vegas. I don't see anybody in Las Vegas, so we'll start in Carson City, and please go ahead whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel, members of the committee. My name is Jennifer Lanahan. I'm here on behalf of the Reno Sparks Indian Colony and the Las Vegas Paiute Tribe. We want to thank the bill sponsor for bringing this bill, and we're in full support of this in codifying this law into the state. Thank you.
Hello, Will Adler, Civil State Government Relations, representing the Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe, Duck Valley Indian Reservation, and Duck Water Indian Reservation. AB 444 looks to codify the Indian Child Welfare Act into Nevada state law. In 1978, when the Indian Child Welfare Act passed, it actually created sort of a sea change in how Indian children were sort of processed through all state systems. And to be clear, that is going on today in Nevada right now. But much like the ERA, the Indian Child Welfare Act could be removed at any federal, change of administration or change in federal policy. So it is one that I would look to say Nevada should codify this, and we should appreciate the policies it represented in this in our own state law, because again, much like the ERA, this is something that Nevada should value and should own ourselves. Nevada doesn't have a very good history when it comes to the educating and sort of raising of Indian children, but I do feel like this policy does have its merits and it belongs in Nevada law. So I want to thank the bill sponsor, Shea Backus, for bringing AB 444 forward, and appreciate your support on the bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. My name is Annalise Porter. I live in Senate District 5. I'm representing myself today. I have volunteered as a guardian ad litem for kiddos in foster care in states that do take ICWA seriously and in states that don't. And I've seen the really different attitudes, processes, and outcomes that result from each situation. It makes a real difference when the state and legislative body takes tribal protections seriously. So I'm proud to live in a state that's considering codifying these protections. I urge the committee's support, and I thank the Assemblywoman for bringing the bill.
All right, thank you. I don't see anybody else coming up in person, so we'll go to testimony over the phone in support of AB 444.
If you'd like to testify in support of AB 444, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue.
Good afternoon. My name is Tammy Tiger, Tammitiger. I am calling in support of AB 444, legislation to protect ICWA provisions in Nevada. I am a citizen of the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma and the eldest of my 8 siblings. My family has been protected and kept together thanks to the federal ICWA laws, which allowed our tribe to grant me custody of my 3 younger siblings following the tragic death of my stepmother in 2009. Our father had previously passed away in 2003. Our family had been through so much already, and at this time, all we had was each other. The thought of them going into foster care in Oklahoma was inconceivable. The Choctaw Nation gave me custody within 90 days and helped me to keep them in a tribally operated residential school in Oklahoma, within the environment that they had grown up in, and helped me with their travel back and forth to Las Vegas for their breaks and summer vacation. This was the least disruptive option so they could graduate with their peers, but still have the comfort and care of our family bonds. As parents, we know that those relationships do not end at the age of 18. I have continued to support my siblings through college and through life struggles and celebrations. With me, they have learned how to thrive as tribal citizens and live within our cultural norms. I cannot emphasize enough how important it is that tribal nation sovereignty be recognized in these decisions impacting our future generations. Thank you, Assemblywoman Backus, for bringing this bill forward, and please vote to support Assembly Bill 444. Thank you very much.
Concludes callers testifying in support at this time.
All right, we'll take testimony in opposition to AB 444. Inviting anybody in opposition up to the table. Go ahead whenever you're ready.
Thank you. Kimberly Surratt, private family law attorney. If I could have signed in both support and opposition, that'd be really helpful. I really wanted to check both boxes, but we need some amendments to this in order for this to be practical. I think everybody on this committee knows I do a ton of alternative family formation work. Right now, this chapter references all of Chapter 127, which is the adoption chapter, in its totality. I have a lot of adoptions I do that are not children being removed from homes. They're not children within the child welfare services, which even though the chapter defines agency as child welfare services, the extreme amount of procedural requirements, notice to the tribe, and the placement preferences should not apply in a step-parent adoption, a second-parent adoption, my three-parent adoptions, my confirmatory adoptions, my assisted reproductive technology adoptions, or adoptions where parents have intentionally said they're not part of the system, it's not abuse and neglect, but they know they can't take care of their child. They want to go and intentionally go through profiles, select a family, or they want to go to that couple at their church that's been supporting them, who's not a native placement, and be able to select that family without being required to go through all these requirements. At a federal level, there has always been recognition of a parent's, their own integrity and their ability to make those choices, and the ability for them to, in a voluntary, not within a 432B, which is our abuse and neglect chapter, adoption, choose a family, choose not to give notice to the tribe, and choose not to do the preferences. I am working with the Assemblywoman on it. The conceptual amendment is going that direction, but it's too narrow because it does talk about just biological parent with a next of kin adoption, but that doesn't cover my second parent adoptions, my LGBT families, all of the many things you've heard me testify on in this committee many times before. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And we will go now to the phones for testimony in opposition to AB 444.
If you would like to testify in opposition for AB 444, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. We have no callers to testify in opposition.
All right, then we will move to testimony in neutral on AB 444. Anybody wishing to give neutral testimony? I don't see anybody coming up to the table in Las Vegas or Carson City, so we'll go to the phones for neutral testimony on AB 444.
If you would like to testify in neutral for AB 44, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. We have no callers for neutral.
All right, then that brings us to the conclusion of testimony. Looks like the sponsors don't have any closing remarks, so I will now close the hearing on AB 444 and move on to public comment. If there's anybody wishing to give public comment in person, you're invited to do so now. But I don't see anybody coming up to the microphones in front, so we'll go to the phones for 2 minutes each of public comment.
If you would like to testify, if you would like to provide public comment, please press star 9 to take your place in the queue. We have no calls for public comment.
All right, then that brings us to the end of our meeting. We will not be meeting tomorrow in order to allow everybody to attend the Police Officers Memorial service, the service out on the plaza where we add more names, unfortunately, to the memorial plaques. And we will be meeting on Friday. So with that, we are adjourned.